Hey guys, what's up? Eddie Aho here with KissAnalog.com. Alright, so today I kind of have a little bit of a rant, I guess. It's about multimeter reviews. And I gotta say that I've watched some reviews lately because I wanted to do a review on some high-end meters, what I call the high-end meters. I have the Fluke 289 here. This one's definitely the most expensive, but it's almost out of the park of the high ends because it's so out there, and it's really not for everyday use, I don't think. Anyway, we're going to talk about this, but I was watching a channel that just reviewed this, and it's interesting because this thing's been out for what, 15 years, I believe, and it's still getting reviews. It's kind of funny, but I guess not, because it's an expensive meter, $800. So within a few days or a week or something, that same channel I was watching also reviewed a Keysight U1282. You know, after watching, I think after watching it, it just occurred to me that I didn't really learn why you'd spend $800 on something like this, other than it's yellow, it says Fluke. Now, I should just, say right now, these are all my opinions, right? I mean, everybody's got one. So, you may not agree with me. If you're a Fluke fanboy, like I used to be, up until I started this channel, when I started getting a bunch of other meters, and I'm like, wow, meters have evolved over the years. I mean, this is one of the more recent Flukes, and it's 15 years old. So, yeah, and it's a monster. This thing I got just because of this channel too, just because I thought, well, I'll get the King of the Hill, I guess, just so I can check it out, see what it's all about. But this stand, some of the stands on some of the more high-end meters, in my opinion, just are they're the worst. They used to do, I thought, a great job of their stands, and now I think they took a really bad turn. Well, I shouldn't say now, because 15 years ago. But then again, anyway, okay, so the rant. So I'm watching these reviews, and I didn't really learn any, why that Keysight was worth $800 or valued at $800, and why this one is valued at $800. So I thought, I'm kind of guilty of the same things I saw, and so it seems kind of obvious, but right out of the gate, I think you should start off by saying what it is you're reviewing. Yeah, it's a multimeter, but there's different levels of multimeters, right? And some meters are meant for different things. Some are electricians type meters. You look at Fluke's website, they'll say, hey, this is the Fluke 87, wherever my Fluke 87 is. Here it is. Fluke 87 industrial meter. Look at the size difference, by the way, guys. Humongous. This thing's a beast. But yeah, the Fluke 87, that thing, industrial meter. Fluke 79, I think this electronics bench test technician or meter, I think. This is the 79.3, but this one's a logging meter, guys. So right out of the gate, I think you should say logging meter, and then state what a logging meter is and the value of it, I guess, or what it can do. And so I'll just say this meter, what it can do is it can log 10,000 data points. So you can hook it up to something, let's say a battery, and every time the voltage jumps up above a certain amount or something, it could turn on and take that reading, and it can do that 10,000 times. And what's neat about that is you can actually go right to the meter and go, oh, I took another reading, reading 587, and then you could graphically look at that voltage spike or whatever, and you can see it, and you can zoom in on it. It's a graphical display, okay? So one of the few meters, well, the only meter I think that has a graphical display, other than the Keysight meters, the smart meters I have, which much brighter, newer displays than this. This display is actually, like much of other Fluke meters, well, pretty much all Fluke meters, the displays are not great, right? You can probably see from there, maybe I'm trying to get the glare out of it. Just, you know, you see the difference between the 87 and that one. So, 87 is easier to read than this. But the nice thing about it is it has multiple lines, so you can see frequency and voltage at the same time, which I really like that. But anyway, so this is a logging meter and has an IR port, so that's what it's meant for. That's why it's so gigantic, and that's what it was meant for, is to collect a bunch of data points. So people that need to do that kind of stuff. So if you don't need to log a bunch of data points, or if you want to buy one of the meters they put out today for, you know, $200 or less, and Bluetooth that will send it right to your computer and let your computer worry about the memory, and you can log all you want. You can do it that way too, guys. But that's why this meter is so expensive. All right, and as well as having all the other features or whatever that this guy might have. So yeah, you get all that plus the logging. So that's why, well, I don't want to say that's why it's worth $800, because I don't think it is. But, you know, anyway, if you want to argue the price point, you could say, well, that's why. At least that's the argument Fluke gives for this. Okay, at least that's what I believe. Again, my opinion. I hope I'm not misrepresenting or misstating something, but yeah, I'm trying my best. Okay, now what I want to do is just kind of rant about, you know, multimeter reviews. When you grab a meter and you go, hey, unbox it, Fluke or Pomona just gave me this meter, I'm going to review it for you guys. Now, I like this particular channel. I like the channel and the person reviewing. I think he did a nice job and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not picking on him for that. But what I'm just saying is that you kind of get in this rut of how to review meters. And when you're reviewing a $50, $200, $400 or $800 meter, I think each meter deserves a different, you know, representation, different, you know, thing to you. Or maybe the same. Maybe if the format was really well, you could use that format and it would work for every meter type. Maybe that's the better way to do it. So, for instance, when you sit here and you pull out a bunch of references and you take all these ohm readings and all these volt readings and all these readings, okay, to me, you're not proving the accuracy of the meter. And especially when it's off a little bit and you say, well, it's pretty close. It's like, well, again, I'm guilty of this too. I'll take 2 meters thinking that, hey, I'm going to compare 2 meters so you can see, like, for instance, a Fluke, since people know Flukes. I'll take a Fluke 87 or something and maybe my Hioki meter and compare them side by side so you can see how the Hioki's different than the Fluke. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. But when I'm, say, taking a reading of a 14K resistor, I should, if one meter says, you know, 13.97K and one says something else, and if the tolerance of the meter gives a range that's between, say, 13.8K and 14.2K, just being ridiculous, but you know, some range like that, I should show that range so you can see that both meters are actually falling within that range. They're both accurate. Today, it's not like in the old days. Things aren't calibrated like they used to be, where you get in there and tweak pots and knobs. Like, you look inside these, you don't have that kind of stuff. They hook them up to a machine. Mostly what calibration is for is just to prove that the thing is still in working order. They're not going to drift that much. They're not going to change that much. Most of us never calibrate anything. And to say we're hobbyists or whatever, that's not, you know, there's a lot of consultants that work at home or whatever that don't ever calibrate their equipment. And there's a lot of people developing circuits or designs, a lot of small companies, they can't afford to calibrate things. So the great thing is electronics today have come so far that it's not like in the old days where you have these big old boards lots of discrete components that can drift and all that kind of stuff, and you're in there adjusting this, adjusting that. Now you have all that circuitry on an IC chip. And for one thing, all those transistors, all those semiconductors scattered around the circuit board, now you got them all on one, and it's the same semiconductor material, so they're all going to drift together or not drift. You know what I mean? So anyway, so taking all those readings and that, I think it's just a waste of time. It's nice to show the displays and nice to show a couple readings, but going on for 45 minutes or 2 hours or part 2, you know, just to take more readings, man, without talking about all the, or showing the benefits of logging and how you use the meter to log and all that kind of stuff. That's what's important about a meter like this, or that Keysight, that U1282A. All right, so part of this video, what I want to do is I want to compare those two meters. Since I'm using those as examples, I'll kind of talk about them, and maybe by the end of the video you have a good idea about, you know, what these meters do and all the cool features they have. Alright, so we have the Fluke 289 and we're comparing it to, which I don't have, and you know what, I'll grab my heel key down here. And one thing I want to show you, the heel key, the Fluke 189, similar size, right? You know, similar size. Fluke 87, a lot of you guys have Fluke 87s or have used them. They're all similar size, right? They all kind of fit the same kind of form factor. The Keysight U1282A is in this form factor, very close to this, okay? So I'm just going to use the blue one so you can, has a little contrast to the yellow one. So it's about an inch shorter, and it's about a ½ inch, it's a ½ inch thinner, okay? And as far as depth, it's only about 1 millimeter less thick. And they probably measure the widest points, which is probably there where you got these grabbers. But anyway, I have pretty big hands. This guy's a behemoth. These are full-size meters. That's full-size plus some. That's gigantic. It's not my favorite reason for several things. One thing, it's so big and it goes through batteries like crazy. We're going to talk about battery life and the functionality. We're going to talk about that too. So I'm just telling you right out of the gate, it's not my favorite meter. It's gigantic. Weight. This thing weighs 1.9 pounds. 1.91 I think is what it is. And this one the Keysight, I'm going to use this as my Keysight. So the Keysight weighs about 0.4 pounds less, about 1.5 pounds. So yeah, it's smaller and about a ½ pound less, about 0.4 pounds less. So smaller meter, okay? All right, so we're talking about build quality. This one has a 1 meter drop. This one, the Keysight, well actually I think this one as well, has a 3 meter drop, okay? 1 meter, 3 meter. Now, to Fluke's benefit, I guess I should say, is again, I said this meter's about, you know, the Fluke's 289 is about 15 years old when it came out. So, you know, back then maybe 1 meter was the thing. Nowadays I think some people are pushing it to 3 meters. So Fluke, maybe they would have taken this to 3 meters if that was a thing. But so just want to point that out. This meter, the Keysight meter, is about 5 years old. It came out about 5 years ago. Okay, the 1282A. So the Keysight has that kind of gold yellow display or whatever, orange display, if you know what I'm talking about. I'll show a picture right here. Alright, so I think it's a really nice display. It's a segmented display like the Fluke 87, like this one, like the Fluke 189 there, like most meters. Graphical is nice when you're logging and you want to see what it looks like. So for a logging meter, you know, that makes sense, right? But for everyday use and that, not the easiest. You know, it doesn't have a lot of contrast, like just sitting here. Yeah, it's just not the easiest meter to. So that's build quality, or that's the build and the test quality. Oh, the other part of that is IP, ingress protection. Okay, so IP, this one's a 42, Doesn't say 42 on it. I'll tell you what. Here's a challenge. If you have a Fluke meter, or if there's a Fluke meter you're looking at, go on their site and try to look up the IP rating. It's not easy to find them. There is one spreadsheet that shows all the meters, and it's a quick glance, kind of a comparison. That one has IP ratings across the bottom. Even that one's kind of hard to find. I couldn't find it last night when I was looking for it. So, but IP 42. Let me explain that. The 4 is dust particulates, or particulates, meaning a lot of times that means dust. This has a 4, so that means a 1 millimeter like thing, needle, whatever. You know, if I was taking a 1 millimeter thing and I was trying to plug it in, that's as big as a thing I could get in there. So that's not that high, okay? All right, so at least it's got an IP rating, 4.2. Okay, now the 2 means like droplets, like not a heavy rain, but you know, some sprinkles coming down, and you turn the angle, I think it's 15 degrees. So that means water's going to hit it, you're going to get a little bit of water trickling down, and it's going to be okay. You know, on all, I think they do it on each surface, okay? 15 degrees. So that is the 42. Well, and just by the way, I have this meter here, this Klein meter. This meter, I think it's like 60 bucks, MM700, maybe it's 70 bucks. This has an IP42, it says it right there. Generally, when people put their IP ratings, they put it right on them. And like I said, a lot of Flukes don't have them. And it might, the Fluke 87 for instance, like this guy, I don't even know what the rating is on this. I'm not sure it has any IP rating. The Fluke Max, you know what the difference is? Go look at the difference. The difference is, it has an IP rating. I think it's 67. So the Keysight, it's a 67. Oh, 67. I got another meter. This Amazon meter. It's like a $60, maybe $70 meter. It's hard to find this in stock. This is probably the best meter for the dollar that you can get. Rugged as heck, safe as heck. It's third-party tested. IP67. Nice display. I mean, look at that. Fits in the hand nicely. Anyway, great meter. Okay. That's Amazon. I reviewed that. I'll put the link down below. So the key, if this was a Keysight 1282A, it would have an IP rating of 67. The 6 means it's the highest number you get in the dust particulate. So the other one was 4. So this is 2 numbers higher. That means it's dust proof. That's essentially dust proof, okay? The 7 means it's kind of waterproof. What it means is you can, I think it's 3 feet of water. So you're out in the site and it started to rain. So you're running to your truck and then you trip, you know? Trip over a 2x4 somebody left there. You fall in the mud, big old puddle, and your Keysight goes in there. And you're up to your elbow in mud and you're like, oh my heck. You pull it out and maybe you dropped it and it lands in a puddle and you're looking for it. 25, 30 minutes later, you find it, you pull it out. It's okay. 3 feet of water for 30 minutes. It's okay. You do that with this guy, you're going to have to probably take it apart and dry it out. Take the batteries out quickly and do all that stuff. Problem with this one, it just occurred to me, is like your iPhone or your smartphone, the batteries are on, right? And so you can't really hit a switch and turn it off and save it like this one. This is a soft switch, and I think that's why it goes through batteries so fast. Where, you know, most of the meters have a physical opens the power, you know, disconnects the power. So I think a lot of meters work that way, right? And so if it's turned off and you're running to your truck and you go in there, there's no juice running in it, and so you'd have time to take it apart. But yeah, this one you couldn't. This one you wouldn't need to, or the Keysight. This, I don't even know what the IP rating is on this one actually. The Hioki might be a 42 as well. Build quality. This is big, heavy. IP rating is not as great. 1 meter drop. And the Keysight is lighter, smaller, and it's got a 3-meter drop, better IP rating. So there you go. Keysight kind of kicks its butt in that regard, right? So, all right, so battery life. I guess that's kind of part of build quality, maybe, I don't know. But battery life, I think this was supposed to be improved, so it's supposed to last 100 hours and 200 hours in data logging, which is interesting. So in data logging mode, it must shut down other functions and go into some low power mode, so 200 hours. And that was nice they did that, because if you are trying to log something and you walk away, you don't want to come back, see your battery died, and you're like, oh man, wonder how many points I logged. It says I can get to 10,000, but I got half of those before the battery died. So 200 hours, that's good. The Keysight, by the way, 6 AA's. The Keysight 4 AA's, 50% less batteries, and it lasts 800 hours. So kind of kicks its butt again, right? Oh, like I said, I used to be a Fluke boy. Anyway, I got this one cheap because it had a big old scratch here, if you haven't noticed. So yeah, I wouldn't have paid anywhere near that. Well, yeah, no way. Because like I said, I got it for the channel. Just like I got the 87 and a couple other Flukes for the channel. I've had those before, gotten rid of them, and I bought them back so for this channel. So, all right, guys, so that kind of information is really handy, right? It helps you compare two meters, $800 meters. You want to know that kind of stuff. And, you know, I think that kind of stuff, the build quality and all those things, that could be important, right? If you're trying to log stuff and you don't want to haul around an extra 4/10 of a pound, then maybe you know that alone would make you want to get the Keysight. The Keysight also does 10,000 points, so you can do that too. All right, I think the Keysight also does 1,000 points manually, so you can manually set it. There's actually like a probe input. It's kind of interesting, and you can, when you have the probe in your hand, it has like a little trigger, and you can go, okay, save that one, save that one, save that one. So you can go around the circuit and save some things, maybe write in a notebook, you know, that maybe you've got logged down what points you're going to measure, you know, breaker 1, breaker 2, you know, something like that, and okay, save that one, save that, you know, there you go, you got it all saved. And then you can go back and look at those readings. But anyway, they have a manual mode. I imagine this does the same or similar. It doesn't have the fancy probe like that, and that fancy probe is a additional, you know, cost. With the Keysight, you have to buy it separately. One thing I should say as far as build quality, with both meters you get silicon leads. Yay, Fluke! Finally. Because otherwise their silicon leads, or whatever that material is, it's like arguably the worst in the industry, including all the cheap Chinese stuff. Maybe not the least safe, but the most stiff. Alright guys, so another point that I want to rant about, that I and let me know, please give me feedback on what you think about this, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different opinions. But I want to talk about the diode test. When I look at these meters, they all show a diode symbol. And I do know the difference between a diode symbol and an LED symbol. And when I read the manuals, you know, they talk about diode testing, right? Of course you can test an LED or a light emitting diode, because it's a diode. But it's, you know, depending on the color and all that, they have different voltages, right? So people like to spend a lot of time lighting up all the different LEDs. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I've just seen reviewers, you know, where it doesn't light up all the LEDs. They're like, geez, well, gotta take a point off for that. It's like, why? It's a diode checker. They put that on a multimeter because people wanting to use a multimeter to troubleshoot are often going to look at diodes in this circuit. I don't know when the last time I saw an LED fail, but diodes fail all the time. So yeah, I want a diode checker. Also, that diode checker is used for checking transistors. Well, bipolar transistors, right? Because they have two PN junction, two diode junctions in there. So you can check your BJT transistors with your diode. And, you know, most meters go up to 2 volts just for that fact. I want to say it's uncommon to have something that goes up to 3 volts or 5 volts. And now so what I do when I review them is I have tried to change that. And I do light up some LEDs. I do that too, but I also try to show you the open circuit voltage. And I call it open circuit. Maybe I should be testing a diode when I test it. I probably should do that but what I do is I put this in diode mode. I check the voltage on the output terminals. And when you see that voltage at 3 volts, you know you can turn on most LEDs. So that's the information I'm trying to provide. Now, the Fluke 289 and the one we're comparing it to, the Keysight, they both are rated at 3.1 volts. So that's great. When you look at the open circuit voltage on this one, it's somewhere around 5 volts. Now, it's rated at, I think, 1 milliamp at that 3.1 volts, because usually 1 milliamp's plenty to check a diode or even an LED. But, you know, anyway, so that's, you do want to be aware of the open circuit voltage versus the test voltage. Once it gets loaded down with that 1 milliamp traveling out of the meter, it pulls that voltage down. And without the load on there, the voltage kind of floats up. And so that's why it's higher. Not always, not in every meter, but like in this one it does. It goes pretty high. And the Keysight, I haven't had one of those. So by the way, I should mention that. The reviews I watched, the guy had both the Keysight and this meter provided for free. This one was provided by Pomona, I guess. And Pomona is a testing company that is owned by the same company that owns Fluke. So that's why they're providing meters. They also own Amprobe. Okay? So Amprobe's also owned by the same company. So, yeah. That's why it kind of bugs me that all Flukes don't come... Well, for one thing, they're so expensive that even their so-called cheap meters that are over $100 should come with silicon leads, because you know they have Pomona. They own those guys. Well, Fluke doesn't own them, but the company, I think it's Fortive, that owns Fluke. They own Tektronix. They own Amprobe. They own a lot of companies, and yeah, so they should be able to get their two little companies together and say, okay, Pomona. And they probably do. Pomona probably does provide the leads, but it's like, come on, Pomona, step up your game. Get rid of those stiff things. People are complaining. Oh, yeah. Here's the thing. I want us to be upset about that, and I want us to complain so Fluke does step up the game. But everybody's such fanboys about Fluke. Just look at the comments on my thing below on this video. You'll see. People just love Fluke. And I used to be one of those guys. But, you know, when you watch YouTube and you see all these other meters, see Fleur, the Screenly, the Bryman meters, right? These EEV blog meter, like this right here. I love this meter. Great meter. Way cheaper than a Fluke. Way better. In my humble opinion, right? But anyway, all right, so diode checks. Come on, guys. Stop, you know. Yeah, we got to remember, it's a diode checker, not an LED. So let's show what the voltage is at the terminals. Let's talk about it. Maybe how much current it provides at the terminal. And maybe show a couple of tests. But let's not knock a meter because it doesn't turn on a blue LED, for hell's sakes. Alright? So there you go. Had a rant. But instead, let's talk about the features, okay? Now, I'm holding a Hioki, even though it's not the Keysight. This is actually my favorite meter right now. And you know what? The meter that used to be my favorite, the Fluke 289. Did I say 289? 289 is sitting down here. This is a 189. And not the 189-2. Terrible. Hate that meter. 189. This Fluke 189 The first one that came out, this guy is the beast. And you know why you can't get any more, in my humble opinion? Because that Fluke 87 wouldn't exist, would not exist with this guy here. My humble opinion. Anyway, that's what I want to do. I want to do a review on these other high-end meters, okay? Not this one, but this one and these. I want to show the difference between them. And then I got caught up in this rant thing, and I thought, hey, at least I'll talk about the benefits for the people that need this. $800 might seem like a good buy, okay? And if you are, then you might want to know the difference between this and the Keysight, so you can make an informed decision. And taking a whole bunch of readings, like looking at the accuracy of the meter, that's absurd, I think. Meters today, they have the chipsets in them. They don't have a lot of that circuitry that the old meters had. And, you know, even going back 15 years, this thing here, I'll bet you it still holds a great reading. Not because it's Fluke. Doesn't hurt that it's Fluke. But not that it's Fluke, but just because it's a well-built meter made 15 years ago. This is a newer meter, but you know what I'm saying. If I find some other older meters, well, that's a problem. Most people are always updating their lines, except for somebody we know. So I was asking my wife, who watches a lot of YouTube channels, you know, makeup channels and clothing and style and all that, and I was just wondering, like, what other company in any industry just owns it, that people just stand by it? It's almost like the audiophile community. They just stand by it. Whether or not you show something that's, you can't argue that's not better, but still they'll say, no, I'm buying this. Like a guy today I saw reviewing a meter, he said, well, yeah, you are paying a little bit for that and the history and all that. And I'm like, what the heck? I don't want to pay for the history of the company. And you know, by the way, some people say I'm buying it because it's American made. Well, yes, this one is actually American made, but it's one of the very few meters that's American made by these guys. As far as I know, that's true. Fluke 87 is, like I said, one of the very few. These two probably make up half the meters that are made in the U.S. I mean, the whole, you know, 289, the 287, is there a 287 still? The Fluke, this one, the 83, you know. But most of the other meters now are made in other places in the world. Okay? They're owned by Fortive. In my opinion, they're a bunch of bean counters, and they're living on the laurels of John Fluke, who built a great company, and they're just, and the Fluke boys are helping them ride it to the grave. We need to complain so that they step up their game and give us better devices. So there's my soapbox. I'm ranting. Oh, it said rant in the title, huh? Alright guys, so let's talk about the great things about the meter. It's 50,000 counts, okay? There's 2,000 count meters, like this old dude. There's 4,000 count meters. I know I have one of those around, at least. Most meters are 6,000 count, okay? That's kind of the happy medium. It gives you enough digits that you get some good accuracy. It's not hard to make them fast, and the noise and all that kind of stuff. 6,000 counts are just kind of a sweet spot. So when you go to 10,000 count, 20,000, 50,000, like this one, 50,000 count, it gets more difficult, right? More expensive. And so the price goes up with the meters. Well, 50,000 counts, the Keysight U1282A is 60,000 counts. So it kind of beats this guy there too. The other thing is the display graphic. It beats Keysight there. Because they're logging meters, it's a logging meter. If it was one of these kind of meters, just a benchtop meter, I'd say the Keysight segment display would beat it because it's easier to read. But because it's a logging meter, I'd say, yeah, that's probably a benefit, right? The display, Fluke high-end meters are fast. They update 5 times a second. That's really fast. Most meters are like 2 times, maybe 3 times, 5 times a second. The bar graph is it 30? I think it's 30 times a second. Okay, so the Keysight was confusing because it had a fast and a slow mode. The fast mode was 40 times a second, and the slow mode was 5 times a second. So it didn't differentiate between the bar graph and the display. So I'm a little kind of thrown off there. I'm not sure, but it's at least as good as, you know, the Fluke, right? It's actually faster, the 40 times versus 30. So, all right, so that 50,000 count's a big deal. 50 or 60, you know, you're kind of splitting hairs probably at that point, but that's a lot of counts. And so what that does for you is you get a lot of decimal places. Now the thing with accuracy, going back to talking about accuracy, that last digit is the least accurate digit, right? Because percentage-wise it's going to be. But also not just because if it says, say, 0.05% accurate plus 1 digit, that means that last digit can go up and down 1 count. So sometimes they will say say 1% plus 5 digits, you know, or 8 digits, or even 20 digits I've seen on some meters. So on the lower resolution meters, it'll say plus 20. So that means, like say on a 6,000 count or 4,000 count meter that doesn't have a lot of accuracy, the last 2 digits can change 20 counts up and down. So, man, the accuracy. Alright guys, sorry, my battery ran out in my camera. So, yeah, so about the accuracy in those digits. So, you got the large count. The other thing is most meters, like the 6,000 count meters and 4,000, you know, so on, even some of the higher count meters, they're limited to 1 kilohertz bandwidth. So when you're reading AC voltages, or especially square waves that have all these harmonics to go to higher frequencies, especially at those, you may not get good accurate measurements out towards 1K square waves. Sine waves you will, but after 1K, that falls off. So 100 kilohertz, that's awesome. So for audio work, 100K is great. That's why a meter like this, the 189, you know, all these high-end meters, they all go out to, well, yeah, I think this one goes out to 20K, I forget. Anyway, so a lot of the high-end meters will go out to 100K, or at least out to 20K, something like that. So anyway, that's another big benefit of an expensive high-end meter. So another thing you get with high-end meters, you know, besides just getting your DC measurements and your AC measurements, you can also get an AC plus DC, which is really neat. And a lot of them have the 2 displays, you know, so you get that too. So that's really neat. So if you have a DC voltage, like from a switching power supply, you got a bunch of ripple on it, you can get, now if the ripple is less than 100 kilohertz, you can get the ripple measurement, the AC measurement, plus the DC. So that's another cool thing with a high-end meter. Another thing is the decibel. You can get gain. So you can look at, if you're doing audio work, for instance, op-amp work, you can look at the input and the output and take gain measurements with the decibels. So that's another cool thing you get with high-end meters. So a lot of times now, even with lower-end meters, you can get the VFD filter, right? The variable frequency drive. So when you're taking AC measurements, it can filter out that noise from that variable frequency drive. And you can use that for other things as well. And, you know, because it has a 1 kilohertz bandwidth, let's say a 6,000 count meter, that filter might be at 400 hertz, all right? Well, with these higher end meters, you have a way of tuning that. You can change that bandwidth. So that's a really cool feature as well. It can help you troubleshoot those noisy AC measurements. Well, the other thing, 6,000 count meters, has a max, a lot of them have max and min measurements, right? See max and min measurements on them. Well, I was talking to a guy the other day, and he had a current probe, and I was using my redfish current probe to take a peak in rush current measurement. He goes, oh, well, you can use that, you can use my current clamp as well. I said, well, no, that takes maximum. He goes, well, that's the same thing. I said, no, it's not. So max measurements are, say, usually around 100 milliseconds. So motors, when they inrush and they start up, they'll usually settle down after 100 milliseconds. So it'll capture something like that. But if you want to capture a transient, like an inrush to a power supply, something like that, it's going to happen a lot quicker. So the ones that with peak measurements, they're usually set up around, what I've seen seems common, around 250 microseconds. So, it's quite a bit faster than 100 milliseconds, right? And so you can capture an inrush measurement or a transient voltage. So they have a peak hold as well. So that's another benefit you get with some of the higher end meters. Another thing that most meters will do is read capacitors these days, right? But with a higher end meter, usually they go to a higher capacitance value. For instance, 100,000 microfarads. So these things I'm talking about, both the Keysight and the Fluke both do that. They both 50,000 count, they have 60,000 counts. They both do decibels. They both do the 100 kilohertz. They both have that adjustable variable frequency drive filter, and they both have that peak capture, and they both will measure 100 millifarad capacitors. That's 100,000 microfarad cap. The Keysight and the Fluke, they both do all those things. They're both $800 meters. They include all those cool features. Now, the functionality, I should say, or the usability of the meters could be a little different. Well, they are different. The Hioki, the Fluke, these other Flukes I have here, all these meters back here, except for maybe the Testo, is a little bit different. But these meters with the dials and all the buttons, you have like things around the dial that are lit up in blue. So I have to hit the shift key to, when I move the dial and it says, oh, decibels, I have to hit the shift key. Some of them have 3 things and I have to toggle through them pretty quick. Or I can go to these buttons, up here, and I can use the shift button to kind of change some of these things. Pretty quick. It's like boom, boom, maybe. Maybe you have to hit 2 buttons, boom, boom, and you're there after you set the dial, right? This one is menu driven, okay? So some people might think, wow, that's pretty cool, but it's not. So you go to move it over here to diode, and instead of just hitting, the function button or whatever and toggling over to it, you have to go up here, hit the menu, okay? So I come up here, hit the menu button, and then I get a couple items here. I have to use the arrow, drop it down to, or drop it up, put it up to diode, I guess, and then say, yeah, that's what I want. Or it says diode or capacitor, so I can hit one of those 2, so I can select diode that way. So anyway, the menu, there's just more buttons to click, especially on some of the menus have multiple things you have to use, the left, right, up and down, to move around. So you might think, well, that's really cool, there's so many functions. But the menu thing is nice for setup features and things you don't use all the time. But when you go to diode or capacitor or continuity, those kind of things that you're just normally used to dialing it over, pushing maybe a shift button or a mode button, it's just quick. Going to the menu gets tiresome. It's not a fun meter to use every day. So, yeah. And then the battery life sucks too. Oh, I think I mentioned that. All right. So maybe I saved the most controversial thing that I dislike for last. And that is continuity measurements. To me, the important thing on the continuity is that when you move it to continuity, does it trip at 20 ohms, 40 ohms, or 50 ohms, or 100 ohms for that matter? When you hear the beep, it doesn't mean it's shorted, it just means there's continuity there. But is that continuity anything less than 50 ohms or anything less than 20 ohms? So you want to know what that level is on your meter where it provides that beep. So you go, oh, that's under 20 ohms. So, okay, click that under, you know. So that's the information we want to know. So, come on, reviewers, when you're reviewing continuity, spit that number out. Say, tell us, is it 20 ohms or 50 ohms? Now, with these high-end meters, often you can adjust that. You can change it where you want it, okay? Like I know I can on my Hyokis. I'm pretty sure you can on the Fluke and on the Keysight. I'm pretty sure. Not positive about that because I kind of forgot to look up that one. But on some of these higher-end meters, like the Fleur, the Hyoki here, you can do that. So I just was kind of assuming you could on the $800 meter. Okay. The other thing about the continuity is when you take a continuity measurement, does it latch, right? So when you click it, does it, when you touch it, you know, if you reach something and you move, does that beep stay on, or when you hit it, does it crackle? Like as you're trying to touch that tip over here, is going, you know, making that kind of sick noise? Or does it find continuity, latch it, and report with the tone? You know, that's what we like, right? So, you know, people take their leads. These are actually really nice leads, inexpensive, silicone, really nice leads, removable tips. I did a review on leads, and I need to do one on this set because this is maybe my favorite set. It's really nice. Oh, okay, back to the Rant. You know, you do this, you can tell if it's latching, and you can hear the tone. Doing this thing is absurd. It drives me crazy. I see smart, intelligent guys doing this. You know, trying to click as fast as they can. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? All right, so I've heard some people say, well, you know, I want to check an IC chip, a bunch of pins. I want to see if any of them short to ground. So I'm going to put this on ground, and I'm going to just run this down the legs. And I just want to do that like that. And I don't want to sit there, you know, be so slow. I just want to hear a chirp. So as an engineer, working with lots of other engineers, you know, mentoring engineers and working with a lot of the technicians, if I had a fault on a board and you were helping me find it and I saw you doing down the legs, yeah, I would not be happy about that. You may as well just replace the chip. So you've already probably damaged the leads. You might have already, you know, dug some metal off, and I don't know. You know, it's just not what you do, guys. You take purposeful measurements. Touch this down, touch that leg, touch that leg, touch that leg. Yeah, does it seem slow? Guess what? You know for sure when you're done that you got the measurements you're either looking for or you're expecting, you know. But you know for sure whether you get a chirp. Just take your time, hit each one, make sure you're touching the right pin. So what if you did that and you heard a chirp? Oh, one of those pins is ground. Oh, let me see. Was that the one that chirped, or was it that one, or was it that? I mean, besides possibly damaging the chip, I've worked in a lot of military industries and defense industries. Yeah, you would not be allowed to do that. So you shouldn't be allowed to do that anywhere. You should do purposeful measurements and not damage the small little chips with your sharp probes and be in such a hurry. Like, I gotta take these readings in a half a second. I can't take 5 seconds to take that reading. I need to do that in half a second. So I was trying to think of other reasons why you would need something that fast. And like I said, these meters report really fast, and you're doing it in a fraction of a second, right? Even the slow ones. Well, I mean, when you're doing this crazy stuff, this fire stick stuff, how many times you're hitting that in a second? A lot of times. I mean, a second, you know. I mean, a second's pretty slow. You don't even have to wait a second. You can touch it, move on to the next pin, move on to the next pin. It doesn't take you long to take those measurements. So I was thinking, okay, what if you're reading a cable and you have an intermittent failure. So maybe an intermittent short. So but then you're not holding these on a cable in that case. You'd probably have alligator clips, and you'd clip onto 2 parts of your cable, and then you'd be bending the other part to see if you're hearing a chirp or a short over there, right? So, and then if you did, you'd go, okay, moving around again. I mean, I just can't think of a case where it makes any sense at all to do that. And any tech school, heaven forbid, that teaches that should be penalized with something. Anyway, it's just absurd. I think it's absurd, and it just drives me crazy. And you know what? Some people might say, hey, the Australian did it. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's a smart guy, and he does know what he's doing. And he was trying to show, hey, is that latching? You know? And so he was trying to show whether it's latching or not. Especially back in the day when he started his channel, 10 plus years ago, there were probably more meters around that did not latch. Today, oh, well, yeah, we have some meters that are 15 years old, but come on, even back then, these guys made latching continuity checks. So, yeah. You know, if Fluke or Keysight had a video showing how to do continuity checks, and they were showing continuity checking, like the fire stick method, oh, God, I think I'd have to retire. I think I've heard of the art of electronics being lost, and I would believe it at that moment. Oh, so anyway, drives me crazy when I see reviewers doing that. So yeah, I don't do that. I do it so I do this so you can hear the beep, hear it a few times, you know. Sometimes I found that some of the cheaper leads, they're after the molding process, it leaves some kind of residue on the metal, and you have to clean that with alcohol or something like that. And you can actually kind of feel it feels kind of slippery. So some people buy a Fluke meter for a couple $100 and don't hesitate to go spend another $40 or $50 to buy. Well, sorry, yeah, I forgot. We're talking about Fluke people. So they will go out and buy a set of the Fluke TL175s for what the heck do they cost these days? $80 or something, $120. I don't even know what they cost anymore. I bought a couple just for this channel. I'm looking at a pair right now, but well, maybe I should show them to you. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? These are Fluke's coolest leads, the ones that rotate, and that Cat 4, Cat 5 cover comes down and protects it. Hey, which by the way, I didn't mention that. Hate to say all, the Fluke 189, or down here, the Fluke 289 right here, and that Keysight meter, they are all Cat 4 meters, right? Cat 4 means, you know, the power outside the breaker box, you know, coming to the residence or the building. That dangerous, scary stuff that has a lot of potential energy, has more potential for, say, surges and that kind of thing, where you need that protection. Cat 3, you know, I've gone over this a bunch of times, but Cat 3, the wires from the service entrance where the power comes into the building to the panels, okay? And then Cat 2, Cat 1, that's where we work. That's this stuff. When I see reviewers, oh gosh, I got another rant topic. When I see reviewers go, gosh, I want to trust this cheap meter to work around high voltage. This is not high voltage. This is 120 volts here in the US. You know, your 240 volts. That's not considered high voltage, guys. That's Cat 2. This is, if I open up this thing and do troubleshooting inside that, that's Cat 2. It's not Cat 3. It's not Cat 4. It's not the scary stuff. You have to be very careful. You can still die, right? But the meter is in a lot less trouble when you're doing this. As a matter of fact, if you look at your benchtop meters, look inside them. Well, first of all, they're not rated for Cat 3, Cat 4. When you look inside, they don't have all those protective features either. Alright, guys. So, I think the rant's over. I think I covered it. Hey. Oh, and by the way, to that topic that I was just talking about, I have some high voltage meters. I have this Fluke right here, actually right here. This is a high pot meter, 1000-volt meter. I've used this meter. I was doing this in a lot of reviews, and I stopped doing it because even the least expensive meters I have, none of them will fill this test. I'll put 1000 volts on this, go between the contacts, nothing. It's not that difficult to protect, have meters rated for Cat 2, okay? So, yeah. Alright, so let me tell you about this meter. Well, you already know the graphics screen. That's one of the big pluses on this, and that you can zoom in and look at those waveforms. You can zoom in, look at those waveforms as it's logging. So as a logging meter, as a logging multimeter, there's lots of logging meters, but as a logging multimeter, this guy does a great job, has a lot of cool features, I guess. Now, the Keysight, there's a few features it has. One thing that puts out, it has a generator, square wave generator, actually puts out a signal, has that extra little probe input that you can use, those smart probes or whatever they call them, that have the little sensors so you can, well, they're called remote probes, so you can say save, save, save. So it has that feature. It also has a counter feature. So besides like a, looking at frequency, it has a frequency counter, so it'll act like a frequency counter. And like a lot of meters these days, again, this is a 15-year-old meter, so maybe they would have added some of these things, who knows? But it has the little non-contact voltage thing, so you can go up to a thing and go, yep, there's voltage there, So it has that feature too. So the Keysight it's a newer meter, it's more updated. In fact, when I look at the Keysight multimeter line, it's impressive to me. There's lower cost meters that are more competitive with, like, let's say a Hioki, or a Fleur, or a Bryman. They've got meters down in that price range that are competitive to other meters, and they're updated meters. They have features and stuff like that, right? So it'd be interesting to know whether or not they come with silicon leads. I don't know that, but I know that these $800 meters do. Okay. All right. So as far as accessories, we kind of talked about it. The Keysight has that one probe. Okay. The common thing with these, when you're having a logging meter, is you're going to want to get this to the computer. So there's a module that sits up here that is smaller than this, but let's say it's that big or something. It's a little module that sits right there, okay? And so it's a little thing about this big. And it says it sends up wireless. I couldn't find whether it said it was Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, but it talks to your phone. You have an app on your phone. So the Keysight comes with a cable, IR to USB to your computer. But if you want to go wireless, they also have a module you can buy. But it's nice that they provide a cable, so at least you have that. And their module fits right here. There's a little plug back here, and it's a little, I don't know. If you look at the modules, you can see what I'm talking about. To me, it looks a little more updated module. If you look at the firmware or the software that both these things talk to, the apps on your phone, or whether you put them on your computer, to me, the Keysight looks a little bit more updated, a little nicer display to look at and to use. So, might be just me. I just looked at some pictures from, what they look like. So I don't know. You guys can download those yourself and check. I think you can download them for free, and maybe you can use them for free. I'm not sure, but you have to check, because I know that Fluke, with some of their other softwares, power quality meter that I was using some years back, you have to buy the software that wasn't inexpensive, plus the thing. And by the way, both of these modules, they're like $130 or something like that. I think they list for somewhere around that price range. So you buy that, buy software, and then you have to, you know how it is these days, you subscribe and you have to pay monthly for some of these apps. So you want to check the Fluke and the Keysight to see if there is any charge like that, because that's really a pain. Where, like I said, like I can use this redfish meter, and I've got some other ones around here that have Bluetooth on them, and I can put an app on my phone, and they're really cool, and it's really neat, and I can log stuff on them. I can sit there, put this on my furnace or something. I don't really need the logging meter personally. I think the apps with some of these Bluetooth devices are super cool. So there you go, guys. Yeah, just want to kind of complain a little bit about reviews. Like I said, I'm guilty of a lot of these things too. So I wanted to kind of change my Multimeter reviews. Let me know what you guys like to see and what you think is valuable. And if you disagree with me, and give me your side of things so I can see where I'm wrong. And I want to do reviews that work for you guys. So let me know what you think and give me some feedback, okay? So, alright guys, so the channel I was watching, it's not much bigger than mine, but he was given or provided a Fluke 289 for free, and also the Keysight U1282A for free. And it's pretty cool that he got those things for free, and you know, a couple $100 meters, pretty nice. Now I like Keysight multimeters. I think, you know, I've been tempted to buy one a few times and just haven't jumped in and bought one yet. Got a lot of meters, and I've got a bunch of meters here to review still. So, but yeah, I don't have anything. I think Fluke is, a lot of their meters just old. They're very expensive, and I just don't think they're up to date. And in my opinion, they just don't compete these days. Now, the Keysights I think do, but regardless, neither one of those companies have offered to send me a meter. Maybe because, I don't know, you know, maybe because I don't pull the punches, I don't know. But, you know, like this guy here, look at this. I hate that big heavy meter and such a crappy stand. I really don't like what they did their stands. And you know, my Fluke 189, which I really love, they should have kept making this. And the only bad thing is the stand, piece of junk. It's got these small little plastic dimples. They're really thin, and yeah, so I just kind of clamp it here. But you know what I just did? I just went on eBay, found one. There's lots of parts for these guys because, hey, everybody thinks they last forever and all that, but they're robust, they don't break, and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. But that thing breaks easily, and it's about 30-35 bucks I think I paid for that. I'll do a review on these, you know, some high-end meters, but I also have to change out the terminals here. I've got this little terminal block, and that was, I forget, 35-45 bucks because somebody abused this one. So I bought this used, and it was probably cheaper because of that. But yeah, so anyway, that's the thing about buying these meters is 20-year-old meter, 15-year-old meter. You don't know when these meters were made. And hey, maybe some of you guys can tell me. My meter, my Fluke 289 has the battery blades, the little flat piece of metal things, and from what I understand, some of them had springs on there. They never changed the part number. They never updated it to like -2 or something like that. Maybe it was too small of an upgrade or a repair or whatever, so they didn't want to change the part number. But I understand, and maybe I've got the information wrong, but let me know if you guys know if the battery compartment has changed, and maybe it'll give me an idea how old this meter is. And you know, the other thing in Fluke, maybe you can see it from there, but oh, it has a help screen. I just hit the help screen. It has a help screen. That's another advantage of this meter. It does have the help screen if you actually need that, but it has the couple stages of backlight. Even with that, it's not as easy to read, in my humble opinion, as the Keysights. I have used Keysights at work. The one job I had, there's one guy who's ex-Navy, and he liked Keysights. So in his lab, he had some Keysights. So I used to go visit him just so I could kind of play with his meters. But anyway, yeah, I was a Fluke guy. But that was just before I left that company and started this and became a non-Fluke guy. I'm not non-Fluke. I don't dislike them and all that kind of stuff, but I do like to point out, I think we need to poke the bear and get them to update their meters, give us better test leads, and so on. Alright, so it's time to end this video. 2 thumbs up to my patrons as always. Appreciate you guys. So there's a thank you button down below that YouTube added. It's a way to do a one-time donation. That's really cool. Appreciate you guys using that button. Really appreciate that. And I've got a video, you can tell I've got an amplifier I'm building, and I'm in the middle of that video, but then I just, yeah, watching some YouTube videos, I just felt like I had to do this one. So alright guys, let me know what you think. I really do want to hear your feedback, so down below, be awesome. You can become a patron if you like. The links down below, and use the links down below to buy any of these meters. I got a list of meters down below. It doesn't cost you anything, and yeah, it helps support the channel. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys watching this video, especially if you've hung out this long. So that's a great way to support the channel too. You hit the like button, the old thumbs up, and subscribe. You know, I want to hit that 20,000. I'm getting really close, so that's really exciting. Pretty darn cool. So thanks for watching, guys. We will see you next time with this. Okay, I got this new amplifier board I'm going to show you. Pretty cool. Ice amplifier. Ice, baby. So alright, see you next time.